Hello, Vinny here from the Slidebean team. Today we're going to be looking at the slides Canva used to pitch their company to investors. Welcome back to Pitch Deck Design. When doing my overview, the first thing I noticed is that this presentation feels too dull, like it was for a high school assignment instead of an investor pitch. It needs to be so much more visual, so much more engaging. After all, these guys are selling design, so the presentation has to reflect those values all the way through. Part of the problem is that the original color scheme of the brand, which consisted only of black, green, and white, wasn't a very rich palette to begin with. Brand guidelines should help you create instead of limiting you. If your brand colors feel too narrow, try adding complementary colors in order to add more variety to your slides. The second thing I noticed is the explanation of the problem takes way too long, around 5 or 6 slides to be more precise. The screenshots from the Google Docs promo video are really hard to understand when presented so small, and they only add noise to the slides. A little tip here, if you want to use the resource of a user persona, meaning telling a story from an imaginary user's perspective who suffers the problem, it has to be a super compelling and clear story. These things usually work better in video format, so unless you want to go that route, I would encourage you to explain this in a shorter, easier way. Always simplify the problem as much as you can. They say sell the problem, not the solution. The next thing that calls my attention is that there are virtually no images until slide 9. Literally, at the very middle of the pitch deck, you need to throw a bone to people, and it needs to be way sooner than this. People tend to have pretty short attention spans, so make sure you capture their attention with a teaser during the first couple of slides. Another thing to notice here, when we finally reach the solution slide, the image and copy are pretty underwhelming. A bolder image with a more compelling tagline would have generated a greater impact. Also, using a product mockup is in fact a great way to showcase your product. Just make sure you make it a little more photorealistic and always with the latest version of the device in which it is shown. Finally, many of the slides are too text heavy, and again, this is a graphic design pitch. The information needs to be either summarized or split in order to avoid clutter, and using more visual resources in order to highlight the story that is being told. So, after this revision, the changes list looks something like this. After I have my list, it's time to start editing the slides. I begin by creating a more compelling, edgy cover that feels a little more tech-related. I love using background images because they are hard to ignore, and a good quality photo can make your pitch deck shine from the very beginning. Depending on the content on the foreground and the image itself, you may or may not require to increase the opacity on the background in order to help improve readability. I then took the liberty of splitting the summary slide into several slides. The reason is that while all this information might be important, jamming it up into a single slide heavily compromises the importance of each section. I'll never get tired of saying this. If there's absolutely no way to summarize a text-heavy slide, at least split it into several ones in order to make the info more digestible. Your audience will greatly appreciate it. After this, I also took the liberty of creating a problem slide, which tries to summarize the original 5 slides. I understand this is a risky move, but if you can't explain a problem or a solution in a few words, this will get really complicated when pitching to investors. Believe me, we've been there. I took some assets from Canva's current website in order to create the solution slide. This slide needs to be super compelling, and Canva has obviously come a long way in terms of their visual output, so the new image works wonders. The new tagline is also so much cleaner. There's a saying that if you can't explain your solution in 7 words or less, you need to go back to the drawing board. Design anything, publish everywhere. Always include real images of your product when possible, or mockups if you don't have real images yet. This validates the concept and helps viewers envision how your product works and what kind of things you can do with it. You'll notice that I created a pretty playful color palette. I got some inspiration from Canva's most recent branding, but this is something that I encourage you to do regardless. There's some misconception that a professional presentation can't use too many colors, but I don't think this is true. A professional presentation can come in many shapes and colors. It is a matter of implementing them in a balanced and pleasant way. Finally, I played around with several slide layouts in order to make the slides more dynamic. In some slides, a 2-column layout works really well, especially when contrasted with a full beat image. In others, I used a combination of rows and columns to create a more complex composition. Play around with this. Taking risks with the layout always pays off. After I'm done with all of this, I do a new revision of all of my redesigned slides, and I see if anything needs some fine-tuning. I love how this redesign turned out. Canva is such a cool and fresh brand, it provides great inspiration to rethink some of their former work. If you want to check this and any other pitch deck redesigns, visit the link on the video description. And if there are any other presentations you would like us to review, let me know in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.